Animal Farm Part 2, Chapter 4, The Meeting of the Nations. The crystal was only one crystal, and there were many other frequencies that needed to be heard to resonate throughout the nations. The knowledge of the chakras was bestowed upon the doves. Nobody thought such simple birds of no color would carry the knowledge of all the colored energy frequencies of the universe. That was what white was, though. Didn't you know? It was all the colors of light. Other birds had heard of the knowledge of the chakras and bore the colors of the birds of paradise. They were lovely in their passion for the truth, but some failed to grasp the deeper meaning behind it. They could bend their bodies in unique ways, though, to open chakras through physical movement. The animals needed physical items to connect their thoughts because the power of thought had been taken over by man. The thoughts of men, fear, anger, lust, greed, gluttony, pride, and selfishness filled the animals' minds. The few centimeters inside their skull were no longer their own, as they had chosen to let the PDDs fill their minds because they didn't want to think. It hurt. Neither did they want to physically move about and exercise, as that hurt too. The majority of animals sought a life of comfort and ease. They failed to understand their bodies were created as that of their mother, that had requirements to live. Their hearts were pumps that worked by constricting the muscles throughout their body. Without the movement of all the muscles, the blood could not pump effectively. The animals were not only dying, but living pain-induced lives from the poisons that filled them, and the lack of physical activity being chained to PDD. It was believed the animals could handle at least 7.5 hours of being chained to a PDD, with no physical requirement than the occasional muscle constrictions of one's fingers to type. If the animal refused to be chained to the PDDs, they were refused food, water, and shelter, the basic physical requirements of life. With this base chakra being in a constant state of turmoil, the animals could not balance themselves or their lives. They could not seek enlightenment or connect with others, as these skills were not acquired until one had first balanced their heart chakra. The crystal needed all the crystals to vibrate at all frequencies to unite all the animals. The meeting was merely a meeting of the nations. Appointed by some animals, exactly how is unknown, as the animals never held a general meeting to vote anymore. The leaders of the United Nations were merely animals too. Some were there trying to create a better world for all animals. Some were there by duty to appear as though they were striving for a better world too. These were the leaders that typically did not even show up for the important meetings of change. Even when they did meet, the only thing agreed upon was that a change needed to be made, and sometime in the future, it would occur. A young badger once approached them and scolded their lack of effort. This was their responsibility for the position they carried, yet they would not act. Just as the historic Titanic had once represented the world and offered insights to be learned from, the majority of leaders were more interested in the treasures that lay within than the stories of those who perished. The crystal was first asked to swear that its statements would be truthful. It refused to swear upon one book alone, but made an oath to the people. I cross my heart and promise to give all I've got to give to make all your dreams come true. In all the world, you'll never find a love as true as mine. You will always be the miracle that makes my life complete. And as long as there's a breath in me, I'll make yours just as sweet. As we look into the future, it's as far as we can see. So let's make each tomorrow be the best that it can be. I cross my heart and promise to give all I've got to give to make all your dreams come true. In all the world, you'll never find a love as true as mine. George Strait, I crossed my heart. Other singers stepped forth before the United Nations, and their voices rang out around the globe to all animals. The innocents. It was the innocents locked in the hall that perished that should have been remembered. Locked behind the iron gates of the Titanic, they perished because the upper class was comfortable. The upper class could have easily saved themselves, and yet even they didn't have the common sense to forego comfort for survival. The lower classes below had little choice. The truth of the ship's sinking had been hidden until the icy waters of the Atlantic were pouring into their rooms and drowning their children. I'm sure when it first began, they were probably told it was just a burst pipe, and just calm down and relax because maintenance would arrive, which were the trade animals themselves, once it had been reviewed and approved by the upper class. As we know with all bureaucracies, if it doesn't suit their needs at the time, it was not approved. The innocents died while the ruling, comfortable few continued their lives of leisure. The animals recognized this life of leisure. The middle class of animals, the ones right below the main level of the machine, had received the scraps of food and knew of its true goodness. They could see the light and feel its power from time to time. There were just small beams of light that filtered through the rickety machine. The scaffolding around the heart had aged, and occasionally pieces would break off, killing a few innocent animals below. The offices of the governments and organizations were on the top floor. Access was restricted, of course. The lower levels slowly deteriorated to the extent that if you entered the ground floor, you'd be stupefied. Animals were not allowed to enter these lower levels either. Access was denied except to the specialized crew that did the animal shutdown cleanup maintenance check. It was in these times that the vermin, or animals, that had slipped through the cracks were exterminated. Whether it was public knowledge or not was unknown, as the majority of animals didn't want to think about it. It was sad, and they felt there was nothing they could do anyway. Those who did care about the state of disrepair of the machine were told they could only care about a few specialized problems, and were then directed to the organization that had been put in place to deal with that issue. The animals did not want their comfort tainted with negativity, as they knew the effect it had on their chakras, so they called the problems issues, and were therefore less negative and more tolerable to discuss over tea. Tensions in the Middle East had created the need for more energy. Then in the war, the Soviets killed animals in the name of animals. Hell, they had an entire floor dedicated to controlling the animals' workforce, to use up resources with objects of war, and then blow them up or sink them in the oceans, adding even more poison to the water. The machine that was created to control the Earth's heart and drain her body of her resources was created with the thoughts of men and fueled by the animal's own energy. How would they ever deal with such an intricate machine that all life balanced on? So many futures can be seen that surely led to the collapse of the lungs or perhaps liver failure. The machine had taken the fruitage of the spirit, fermented it, and fed it back to the animals.